Like say you are that mom that can't sleep, can't lose weight, you're exhausted, your periods are out of whack, or, you think your hormones are a problem, or you've got thyroid issues already. A lot of times the conventional medicine approach is just to give you a pill. And that's like you're a pot of water on a burner and you're boiling over, and we're just going to put a lid on it. That's not really addressing the problem.
Welcome to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast, where you will learn how to remix your mompreneur life so that you can win at work without losing yourself in the process. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I am your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business and elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl and hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Let's do this. Well, hey friends, it's Martine Williams, and we have another amazing Turquoise Talk guest today on a really, really important topic on just health, just being healthy, hormones, being your own advocate for your health, understanding hormones. Like we're going into all those things today as a mompreneur, because a lot of us spend a lot of time in adrenal fatigue and we're in this cycle of burnout and we don't know how to get out, and we think we're crazy or like we're the only ones or what's wrong with me. And so I'm really excited to have Lori Aikman on the podcast today. And she's a former nurse practitioner turned functional and health practitioner who is dedicated to helping high-achieving women and mothers take control of their body so that they can have energy to do the work they love and enjoy the life they work so hard to build. Amen. I mean, how many of us are working so hard to build a life, but we get there and we're just exhausted? Having worked in family practice, Lori met woman after woman struggling with fatigue, weight gain, mood swings, insomnia, period problems, low sex drive, and more. Can you relate? Despite 11 plus years of experience in traditional medicine, Lori struggled to help these women. She instinctively knew there had to be a way, which led her to discover and train in functional medicine. In her virtual practice, The Vibrant Woman, Lori helps women identify and reverse the root cause of their symptoms through functional lab testing. She guides women with the tools to get their energy back, lose weight, and balance their hormones, focusing on the whole woman, physical, mental, spiritual, so that they can live the life that they desire. And y'all know that is what I am all about, the whole woman. As a life coach, a piece of life coaching is business. So yes, there are times where I talk about business. A lot of the times I talk about business, but we have to look at the whole picture, the whole woman, because that's just a small piece of who you are. And I love that she takes this holistic and focusing on the whole woman. Lori holds both a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and a Master's of Science in Nursing from the University of North Florida School of Nursing in Jacksonville, Florida, with 11 plus years of practice. She is also a certified functional nutrition counselor. Lori's a wife, a mom of two, and a Florida girl who walks her talk as she has walked through her own periods of burnout as a high achiever, entrepreneur, and mom. Burnout is not your birthright. I love that. Y'all know I get super pumped up about this topic, so I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. And I know you're going to just be so blessed by it. So let's get right to it. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. I'm your host, Martine Williams, your CEO, Chief Encouragement Officer. And if my audio sounds a little different today, for whatever reason, my microphone just decided not to work today. So I may sound a little echoey. I'm sure Chris, who does my editing, is going to notice it and still do her very best to make it as smooth as possible. But I'm really excited to have our guest on today, Lori Aikman. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I love bringing on other entrepreneurs, mompreneurs, and I'm really excited about our topic today. So thanks so much, Lori, for coming on and being willing to share with everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we're just kind of getting to know each other. We were just laughing before we started recording just about how as mompreneurs, we just figure things out. You know, like she was having some issues with her sound and speakers. I was having, issues as well. And we just roll with it.
Yeah.
But for those people who are on and listening and don't know you, know your background, tell us a little about you, your mompreneur journey, how you got into entrepreneurship.
Yes, yes. Yes, I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two little people. I feel like I've got two toddlers right now. I have just like getting everybody in the car ready for preschool today. I have my son is 2.5. He'll be 3 in January. And then my daughter is 14 months. So they're busy. I've been married to my husband this year will be our 5-year anniversary. And I'm a nurse practitioner background. I've been a nurse practitioner since 2011. And I really always loved health. I grew up, my parents were both very athletic, and I always was very, eating healthy and things like that were always, just part of our life. And as I was a nurse practitioner, I worked more in the hospital setting for a while. And then I just found like, God, I wish there was a way I could like help people with more preventative health and things like that, but still use my life, still be a nurse practitioner and use, all this training that I have. And there's always kind of been that desire to do, to be an entrepreneur and do my own thing. So I actually started, if we want to talk real about entrepreneurial journey. So 2019, I started just doing some basic like nutrition coaching within my gym. My husband and I are both CrossFit trainers and have coached CrossFit. And so just did some basic, macros, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it just seemed like there was more that I could help people do, beyond that. And then at the same time, I had gone from the ICU to working in family practice. And I found that I had patient after patient coming in, usually moms that were, 30s, 40s, maybe, that were like, I just don't feel like myself. I could feel better. I've never been an anxious person, and now I have anxiety. I have insomnia. My periods are off. I think it's my thyroid. And I didn't really know how to help them at that time, just from my traditional medical training, as a nurse practitioner. I would run blood work on them and stuff, but I couldn't figure out. I knew that obviously they weren't crazy. And, intuitively, I knew something was off. Mm-hmm. Like they knew their bodies, but I couldn't find anything. Most often, we didn't find anything major that was going on. So that led me to find functional medicine. And then that's where kind of my entrepreneurial journey kind of took off. And I realized this is what I really want to do. And I started a virtual practice, which is, how I help people now, help women now. And we're looking at, so if anybody doesn't, it's like, okay, what the heck is functional medicine? A lot of people describe it as root cause medicine. So I like to say, okay, you're having, like, say you are that mom that can't sleep, can't lose weight, you're exhausted, your periods are out of whack, or, you think your hormones are a problem, or you've got thyroid issues already. Well, a lot of times the conventional medicine approach is just to give you a pill. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, let's try birth control. Let's try antidepressant. Let's try something for sleep. And that's like, you're a pot of water on a burner and you're boiling over, and we're just going to put a lid on it. That doesn't really take away the problem. That's not really addressing the problem. Maybe the pot's not boiling over anymore, but why is the burner on? It's on a burner. Why is the burner on? What's really going on? And that's where I find is just so rewarding in getting to help my clients and patients, because they tell me things like, okay, so I'm not crazy, when we do their labs and stuff. And I'm like, this is what's going on in your body. They're like, so I'm not crazy. I'm like, no, you're not. It's just our conventional medicine setting isn't necessarily set up to help women, with these more, as the medical literature would call it, these vague symptoms, vague complaints, Yeah. So that's what's got me to now and what I do.
That's awesome. And I love that you brought up the word crazy, because I do think that is how we feel when we start feeling off. And it's, like we just think, well, what's wrong with me? I hear that all the time with my clients, like, what's wrong with me that I can't just start this new habit? I'm like, well, you've never done it before. It's not been your focus. Yeah. Like, you have to give yourself grace and space to adopt that new mindset or adopt that new habit. And when it comes to our physical health, I mean, it is, because if you are doing the convention route, and nothing against that, I think they all serve a purpose. Yeah. But
yes, definitely.
you can start feeling like, okay, I'm like, because you're either it's falling on deaf ears or you've tried other things and it hasn't worked. You just naturally internally think, well, what's wrong with me? It's just me.
Yeah.
But there's so many women specifically, if we're talking about mompreneurs, that deal with this. And you have to just be your best advocate. And that is one of the things I know you feel strongly about too. Like you have to just be willing to investigate and do that work. It's not easy, to try different things and things don't work. And even just try different practitioners, right? Like what works for one is not going to work for the other. And it just seems so daunting in our mind. I know for me, it's like almost the same thing with people who struggle with therapy. It's like, oh my goodness, am I going to find the right therapist? And so I'm just not going to I'm not going to go to therapy, even though I need it, because of the thought of trying to find the right one. So what advice would you have for someone who's listening? And we're going to go into more detail, but someone that's listening is like, okay, I feel like I'm crazy. I need to find someone. Like, what are obviously they can connect with you too, but what are some things they should be looking for in a practitioner?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's tough because I've been in that same situation too. I had some autoimmune skin issues come up after babies, and I have a friend that's a derm nurse practitioner, and went to her, and I could tell, I'm like telling her, well, I did my gut testing and I think this is going on and it's, flaring up my skin, and she's gone. And I can tell because she's conventionally minded.
Right.
She's going, you're taking all these supplements and you're crazy. Like I can tell, I just, which is, whatever. But that she does her thing, and I needed a biopsy, and that's what I got, gave me my answers, and then I went on the way.
Right.
But I would, you really do have to be your own advocate. That's what I find is consistent across the women that I work with. So what I find with my clients is that's a common theme is unfortunately, a lot of times they have been to somebody else before, and they're like, well, I had, whether it's their PCP, or sometimes I've had patients or clients who have even been to another functional provider, because I think functional medicine is getting more and more popular, which is great. But, making sure somebody knows how to address you, and your problem. I work with women in their, I'd say 30s and 40s, sometimes 20s and 50s too, but the meat is typically 30s and 40s. They're busy working moms who have kind of hit a burnout place hormonally. They don't necessarily know that. And I've been there. The reason I feel like I'm a good person for that is because I'm right there too. I'm going through my own journey after I had babies late in my 30s and now almost 40, and, those hormonal shifts. So I think it's somebody also understanding like what stage of life that you're in. Because at 35, we can start having some perimenopausal shifts in our hormones. It just depends on, you and your body. And then somebody who understands the whole picture, I think is important too, because there's practitioners out there, thankfully, that do specialize in things when we need them. Right. But like, there's a lot of focus on gut health right now. Well, that's great. But how do we need to make sure we know that the gut and hormones and detoxification and are all related, and you can't really look at one in isolation. I think that's when people don't really see results, is when someone doesn't necessarily know how to look at the full picture.
Yeah.
So I know that doesn't really tell you like where to go to look to find somebody.
No, it does.
But I think who do you feel comfortable and confident with too? Have they built trust with you that you feel like, okay, even if they don't necessarily know every answer, they're going to advocate for you. They're going to look for the answers for you to help you feel your best and regulate or normalize whatever needs to be in your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also think just my experience with some friends that I know that are holistic practitioners and do look at the whole picture, and they're really trying to investigate and get to the root cause. They're super passionate about it. And they're also just really great listeners. And they give you the space and the time to talk about what you need to talk about, which is not typically seen again in conventional medicine. It's like you're in and you're out. And so I think that's an important quality to, at least for me, like if I'm looking for someone, like if you're paying attention and I can tell you really do care and I'm not just a number to you, then I'm more willing to spend my dollars with you, whether that's a coach or a mentor or a personal trainer or whatever. I mean, if you truly do care about what you're doing, you can tell, and you can tell when someone's really concerned about your results.
And yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about burnout, because, I don't know if that's a big topic that I talk about with my clients and help them with as well. And how are you seeing with your clients burnout affecting like hormones and all the things? Because it's almost become, you probably have seen this too, it's almost become like an accepted way of life for moms to just operate in burnout, which is when you look at the data and you look at how it's actually affecting your body and your mind and your soul and all the other areas of your life, it's like, oh, okay, wow, this is a serious condition that I need to be focusing on. But you need that awareness first, right?
Definitely.
How are you seeing that show up for your clients?
Yeah. So I will say, so something that to speak to the point you just made is I'll talk to, one of our initial calls or something or maybe even just an interest call. We're going through their life and their symptoms and what's been going on lately. And one client in particular, I always think of, she was pregnant with her first child right before 2020, like end of 2019, 2020. Her father passed away. She lost her job. She had another job change within, I don't know, some time of us working together, like just all, so she's telling me or another client going through divorce, sold a business, owning 2 businesses, sold a business, has health issues. Like women take on so much and it's just, you're normal, right? So it just kind of feels like, well, that's just
what we do,
but I'm like, that has worn on your body, all these things. Then, both of those people that I just mentioned are moms. One of them is a single mom. Just parenting can be really demanding on your body. But symptom wise, the 2 definitely most common symptoms that I hear is trouble losing weight and feeling exhausted. Just energy levels are so low, have to have a whole pot of coffee in the morning to get going. Those are the 2 most common complaints I hear. But then there's other things like the brain fog or mood, like I can't really focus or concentrate like I need to. And this may be a little controversial, but there's so much out there about ADHD. Well, I think I have ADHD. And I'm like, well, maybe, burnout, if we look at it physiologically, so adrenal fatigue is sometimes another name, or HPA dysfunction, that affects your brain chemicals. So you're having a hard time focusing because things are out of alignment in your body. It's not necessarily that you need to be on ADHD meds.
Right.
So focus, concentration, brain fog, insomnia can be bad for some of my clients, either trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. Your hormones, as they shift, our progesterone lowers in perimenopause can also contribute to that. So there can be kind of 2 factors affecting that. And then really bad, I've had other clients with just really bad PMS too.
Yeah.
Where like one client in particular, also a mompreneur, she's like, my husband knows when my period is coming, and it affected her home life. It affected her work, things like that. And by the end of our 3 months working together, she's like, I feel like a new woman. I didn't not know that. I just thought that was normal to have, the moods, like her mood swings were very, very significant for her.
Yeah.
So those are just a handful. I should say thyroid issues.
Yeah.
Thyroid issues often are a downstream cause of that HPA dysfunction or adrenal fatigue or whatever phrase you want to use.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something that is so common, especially just going to the doctor or anybody, or even just talking to your own friends about some of the symptoms that you're having, it's like, it's normal, right? Like you're not the only one that are dealing with these symptoms, but in my brain, I've always come to it's not right though. Just because it's normal and a lot of people are experiencing it doesn't mean it's right. Like we don't need to feel those things, right? But when
it's common, but not normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone has things they're dealing with, but that doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean you just accept it as this is just what mompreneur life is about. And that's why the title of this podcast is Mompreneur Life Remix, because it's all about remixing how mompreneur life can be for the better. You don't have to live in burnout. You don't have to sacrifice yourself and your soul on the altar of success. Like you can be both a great mom and a healthy mom and a great wife and a healthy wife. Like it's a both and. It's not either you burn yourself to the ground or you can't be successful. And so it kind of starts with a mindset shift too. I'm sure you see this and it's something you work with your clients on. Like they have to have that mindset shift first to looking at the whole picture and not just throwing Band-Aids on things, or like you said, putting the lid on the pot and just accepting it. Hey friend, can I give you permission today? Like for real, your own permission slip. Permission to get
clear, to cut out the noise, mostly the noise that is going on around in your own mind, in your own head. It's just swirling. And you're asking yourself questions like, why am I stuck? Why am I frustrated? Why am I not making progress on my goals? I want to invite you to a free clarity call with me where we're going to dive in and we're going to identify what are the three main issues that are keeping you stuck. Number two, what are the mindsets around those issues that are actually keeping you from solving for those issues? It's not our skill sets, it's our mindsets that keep us stuck and hold us back. And then number three, identifying what are your next steps. We all have a next step, and we have 100% responsibility for those next steps. Your only next step right now is to go to the show notes and book your free clarity call so that we can work through this. I'm believing in you, and I cannot wait to see you on our clarity call. So what are some things that you see this hormone imbalance? I know this for me, like I'm 47, I think, or I'll be 47. I kind of stopped counting.
Isn't it funny how you forget?
You like counting after 45. Like all I know is I'm getting closer to 50, so I'm not counting anymore.
Yeah. I never thought I'd forget like how long I've been married, but I was like our last anniversary. I was like, I can't remember. I said the wrong years, and my mom even was like, "No." I was like, "I don't know. It's all a blur."
Well, we got married in the year 2000, so that makes it really easy for us to
there
remember.
There you go.
There's actually some statistics that say a lot of people got married in that year just because it was easier for them to remember how many years they've been married. But I'm sure you see a lot of hormone imbalance. And what are some things that you do or that women, there are certain tests that we should be taking at certain ages to kind of not waiting on the symptoms to come, but just kind of get ahead of it. Does that make sense?
Yes. So in my practice, and this isn't necessarily something that everyone needs, but in my practice, I use a functional hormone panel called the Dutch Plus in particular is the one I use. So Dutch stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. But that is the reason I use that test is because I find the women that I work with are women that are in burnout. So we've got that test looks at the adrenals, but then it also looks at the sex hormones. So things like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. There's tests that look at those individually. Like if you're like, oh, I think it's, but again, if you're a mompreneur, you're listening to this, like you need your adrenals tested along with your, your sex hormones too.
And is that tested? Like, I don't feel like, is that like, if I just go to my regular, like annual checkup, they don't run those channels, right? They're doing like lipid studies and things like that, but they're not really. Okay.
And there are things you can glean from standard tests, right? If the adrenals are a problem, you can see a change in your electrolytes. So things like sodium, chloride, potassium can be off. But yeah, that is typically just all my clients are either, there's kind of three phases of adrenal fatigue or burnout. So there's when you're first under stress, cortisol is high, then stress continues, you don't get any relief. And stress can be like physical. I mean, it can be you work night shift or, I've come from a hospital background, so I've worked my share of night shifts. I mean, stress isn't necessarily like, oh, I'm stressed out.
Right.
Because I sometimes have women say that. They're like, well, I love my life. I really enjoy my life, but they're raising 3 kids and they're, doing all the things.
Yeah. And that's how you get stuck in the cycle. Like, I want to stop there, but that's how you get stuck in the cycle because you're like, but I really love my life. I love all the busyness of it. Like, I'm enjoying it. But I think it goes back to knowing your capacity. We all have limits to the capacity of energy that we can exert. And so when you have expectations of yourself to exert that amount of energy, when you just don't have it in your DNA to have that capacity, it's really important. So again, it's almost like misleading and we stay in it longer and it gets unrecognized for longer periods of time because we're like, oh, I'm enjoying my life. I'm like, and we don't slow down long enough to really ask that question honestly.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think we think we're doing, this is something I am guilty of and I have to work to, is I'm giving a little bit to a lot of things. Right. Yeah, and I'm like, I can handle all this. Where, well, really Like if you think about being a CEO, right? CEOs are, like if you look at business, like you need to be focused on your high level revenue generating like think about yourself like that in your life, like delegating, like you don't need to be handling all the things, and you'd actually be more effective if you were laser focused on the things that you need to do, right? And you like, I don't know, just, I mean, that can go in so many ways, but But yeah, burnout, so you have high cortisol, you continue, life continues, you don't get relief, you have more stressors, your cortisol starts to get dysregulated where it can be high at times where it's supposed to be low, and low at times when it's supposed to be high. And then when women end up in that burnout stage is when cortisol runs really, really low. And I see either that compensatory phase, that intermediate phase, or burnout is where I see the majority of my women. The only test I ever saw where somebody had really high cortisol was actually a man. This was one of my clients' husbands.
Yeah.
Otherwise, women are, and physiologically, there's actually studies that show like we're not set up to handle, like men physically in their bodies handle stress better than women do. We burn out faster.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what we were like, what question was I answering?
Mompreneur brain is a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
But what do we do?
Yeah.
So we do the test to see what's actually going on, because really, and the point I want to drive home is that the sex hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and there's different forms of all those and metabolites. Those are typically downstream effects of the adrenal hormones. So what I see in most of those women is especially when they're in burnout, their sex hormones look like they're in menopause. I think I have a friend that was a client and works with me now. I mean, she was, I want to say when we did her test, she late 30s, I want to say 38 or 39 when we did her test. And she looked like she was in menopause, hormone levels. It wasn't that she needed to now be on estrogen and progesterone.
Right.
It was that we needed to get her adrenals working again. And she did. Within like 3 months, she started ovulating again and, getting things back up. So that's where that root cause piece is really important, and not just, and I don't want to be like, yes, knocking OBGYNs or primary care or things like that. But if they took a blood test and saw you had really low levels of hormones, like if she went to her general doctor, they saw low levels of hormones, they would be like, well, maybe you're in early menopause and we need to put you on hormone replacement therapy. Well, that really wasn't, in my opinion, not the best solution for her.
Right.
It's why are those things so low in the first place? It's because the adrenals are suboptimal, like super suboptimal operating, when we've got to get those back up. And then all the other sex hormones fall back into place.
Yeah. So powerful, because it is easy to look at like outward appearances or just some of those, like you said, preliminary tests and like, oh, here's the easy fix. Not easy fix, but here's a fix. But if you don't ever solve the root problem, it's going to keep flaring up, and you're not going to get the results. And then again, that cycle begins. What's wrong with me? I'm crazy. I've tried this doctor and it didn't work, or I tried this and it didn't work. And you just didn't get down to the root cause of that. So for someone who's listening, like what is and this probably isn't for everyone, so you may not be able to give like a blanket answer, but for someone who comes in and kind of starts this process, is it pretty quick that you figure out, okay, this is the problem, it's the adrenals? Or like, how long is that process from the diagnosis or figuring out to actually like results?
Yeah. So it's literally just when I get the Dutch test back, I can tell right away looking at the Dutch test. So the only thing about the Dutch test is because we do have to time it in someone's, what we call the luteal phase. So if a woman is cycling, we want to do that test in between when ovulation we think happened. Sometimes women aren't ovulating even though they're having periods. So we want to check that test in between when ovulation happened and then before their period starts. So kind of in the middle there. So sometimes that can be a little bit of a delay. Like I had one client last month, she thought she was afraid she was pregnant. And so, or not afraid, but just there was concern she could have been. And so, she waited, took some pregnancy tests and stuff, was not pregnant. So now we're testing this month. So it just, because it's got to be timed, that can sometimes make the time to find out a little longer. But it's just as soon as we get the test, it's usually a 2-week turnaround time on the test. And then, like I said, as soon as I can see the Dutch, I can tell you, what's going on.
And you just go to labs, right? I mean, it's labs, simple blood draw.
So the Dutch panel is actually, it's a home test. They use a combination of urine and saliva.
Okay.
So the reason being is it gives a more comprehensive, like the name is, it gives a more comprehensive picture of the levels.
Okay.
So a lot of the sex hormones there look at the metabolites that are in the urine, gives us a better picture of what's going on there. And then when we look at the adrenals, we want to see something called the free cortisol. And that's best tested in the saliva, because you could have like a more normal, and I see this often. You can see a high cortisol in the urine, but you see a low cortisol in the saliva because your body isn't activating it to protect itself. So that's probably too TMI, but just to understand why we want to look at it, it's not just a blood draw, and it's looking at this more. It usually takes a day to take the test. So you have to do a couple urine samples during the day, and then you do a couple saliva samples during the day.
Okay.
And then you mail it off, and then we get the results in about 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know somebody was thinking and wanted to know kind of like what that process looked like.
Yeah. Like what is that?
Yeah. It's always bigger in our heads than it really is, or it's going to take longer. It's going to be harder. So I just think that really helped to kind of simplify like how that process would go. So let's talk a little bit about regulating our nervous system. And I know one of the things you'd like to talk about is kind of like your cycle and your nervous system and all of that. Like we are so overstimulated in our nervous systems. And sometimes that comes out with, lashing out and the things, saying things we don't mean to say or whatever. And so I think this is an interesting topic. And I think we don't talk about it enough. Like, how do you regulate your nervous system and how that actually is impacting you? So can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, definitely. So that's actually like, I have kind of a hierarchy of, or like a pyramid of like, okay, we have to get this first, then we do this, and then we do this. And at the bottom, at the base is regulating your nervous system. Because if you think about it, like I have a family member I can think of has a mompreneur, a very demanding job, many clients, not to call her out. She knows it.
Right.
But even if she's eating well and exercising and things like that, she's having all these symptoms because her stress level is, she's working like 7 days a week sometimes. And so that can be maybe what's going on. A lot of times women come to me and they say, well, I'm eating healthy and I'm exercising. They're doing all those things. Yeah. But their nervous system is like, firing all day long. And that really is, so if we look at the science behind it, when it's something called the sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight, right? So when we are, even if you're not stressed out, like I can think of just getting my kids ready to get out the door this morning. I was like, I'm trying to make sure I remember everything. And, it's like herding cats because they're two toddlers, they want to take their shoes off and they, how toddlers are.
Yes.
So, I mean, I could tell I got to a point where I was just like trying to get the lunch boxes ready where my nervous system was keyed up. Well, the problem is that most of us spend the majority of our time over here in that fight or flight. Yeah. So and this is called the autonomic nervous system in your body. So you have the sympathetic, and then the opposite of that is called the parasympathetic. And that is when I know people call it other things, but when I learned it in biology class, I don't know, long time ago, it's called rest and digest. And so we think about that, your body does have, like, we need to get into that parasympathetic, that rest and digest. We've got to make time to do that every day. And my favorite way in the just because physically in my body, I can tell it gets me there, but then the data, the scientific evidence backs it up, is breath work can be really effective for getting you there. And it's just something that a lot of people resist, even myself, I'm like, I just don't have, but I mean, it literally can take 10 minutes of sitting down and I like to follow a video or a guided, Wim Hof. There's pause breath work there. I have other friends that are breath work facilitators that have courses and things, but I mean, there's YouTube videos, you can, a lot of free stuff out there that you can do too, but it's literally taking 10, 20 minutes a day, maybe 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening to sit down. And what it does, is it stimulates something called the vagus nerve. It's the biggest nerve in our body. It's a cranial nerve, runs from the base of the brainstem down through our gut. And so when we do that really exaggerated, like diaphragmatic breathing, that triggers the vagus nerve and it downregulates our nervous system and gets us from that fight or flight into rest and digest.
Yeah. And it's hard for like the people who need it the most, us, highly ambitious mompreneurs like that.
Yeah.
That feels like slowing down. And we're like, but we don't have time to slow down.
I don't have time. Yeah. I don't have time. I got stuff to do.
It's so simple. It's literally a 10-minute. Even if you have this is where I tell my clients, don't have the all or nothing mentality. If you have 5 minutes to walk outside and take some deep breaths and just remove, that is better than nothing. If you have 2 minutes, just do something to disrupt that part that's going on in your brain. And for me, when you said it's not that you're always under stress, for me, loud noises, a lot of them, my husband loves to listen to the TV on volume 100, right? While he's watching a video on his phone. And then when my kids were younger, they're making noises and there's just all this noise, right?
Yeah.
And when it's lots of different noises, I feel that discontentment. I feel that stress, welling up.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to either judge yourself or for your husband to judge you or whoever to be like, what's the big deal? You get in the car and you have your music blaring when I get in the car. I'm like, I know, but I love that. And it's one single noise for me. That's how it doesn't stress me out. But when I'm in the house with all those noises. And so I'm learning that's part of how I start feeling dysregulated is my nervous system is it's just too much. The kids are arguing. The TV's on 100. He's watching a video. I'm still thinking in my own brain of things that I want to do and need to do. And it's just too much. And so, just taking that time to remove. And there's just so many things out there, like you said, free resources for people.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's entire podcasts about breath work. So go listen to the podcast. If you need to convince yourself that it's going to be helpful for you, go listen to a podcast about it or do a YouTube search or a Google search. But I'm sure you've read the book Burnout. If you haven't, it's really good. But they talk about completing the stress cycle, which is what you're kind of describing. You have stress is always going to be around, but you have to complete the cycle every day. If you're just continuing to stress, output, and you're not actually completing the cycle with breath work or working out or whatever it is that helps you regulate your nervous system, no wonder we're feeling the things that we're feeling, right? But we just have accepted it, I feel like, as a culture of entrepreneurs, that this is just how I'm supposed to feel. And one day I'll feel better. One day I'll be able to get back to that relaxed state, which never comes because we're not doing anything different.
Exactly.
It's crazy, but it's true. And you're not alone. If you're listening, you're like, oh my gosh, you're describing my life right now. There's hope and there's help. And I think that's a really big message to send. You do not have to live your life that way. There are people like Lori and myself that are passionate about these things and really want to see you live your life to the fullest and not in that constant fight or flight. Yesterday, I was talking with a client and we realized that she was feeling some of the burnout symptoms, not because she was doing too much, but because she was in reaction mode all day. She really wasn't overworking hour-wise and time-wise, but she was just like you were saying, constantly outputting and firing and reacting to email or reacting to messages, reacting to her family, instead of being able to come from a place of proaction and that's not even a word, but being proactive with that.
Yeah.
Makes so much sense.
I know, but it's like you said, but just that making ourselves do it.
Yeah.
Making ourselves slow down.
And making yourself be okay and not shaming yourself if you're feeling this way.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing. We beat ourselves up, I shouldn't feel this way or what's wrong with me. And we kind of go through that shame cycle that's not serving. And that doesn't get you any closer to where you want to go. It just kind of makes you spiral more down into it. It makes you work harder, I feel like, because you're trying to prove yourself that you can do this and that you have this ability and that you have this superwoman cape that you're wearing, but that doesn't always end well. And, there are glass balls and there are rubber balls and the glass balls can shatter, if you don't take care of yourself. There are things like work with the rubber ball. It'll bounce back. You can lay it down, it'll bounce back, but your personal health can shatter. And I know you're passionate about helping people.
I love that analogy.
That's
a
true.
Great analogy.
It's so true. We're all juggling the balls, right?
Yeah.
You just have to determine for you which ones are glass. And if you drop, they get scuffed or shattered, or which one's rubber and they're just going to bounce back. We just, everything in our head is a rubber ball because we haven't really defined what are those really important things that I need to make sure I'm taking care of that don't shatter, when I drop them. So I'm a very visual person. So things like that, I I can really remember and keep moving forward
Yeah,
with.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
So talk a little bit as we kind of wrap up about energy. Like, what are some things like as you work with your clients? Because energy is a big thing. Like, again, we think we have endless supplies of energy, which we don't. But what are some things you've been helpful for your clients to maintain energy, not just physical energy, but mental and emotional energy as well?
Definitely. So I think the breath work is huge because then, you are wearing yourself out by that constantly being in, the sympathetic, the fight or flight. But some basics are literally so many women, just, one, don't drink enough water. And it sounds so simple,
guilty.
But yeah, we're not drinking enough water. So a good rule of thumb is there you go. Yeah. I always have a cup with me with a straw. It makes it easier. I drink more if I've got a straw.
It is like the weirdest thing ever, but it's so true. Mm-hmm. People are like, that is not, it is true. Try it.
It's true. It's so true. It's so true. And flavor it if you need to, get electrolyte packet. I probably do a couple electrolyte packets a day just because I want some flavor. But a good rule of thumb is half your body weight in ounces. Mm-hmm. So, for easy math, if you weigh 200 pounds, you need to be drinking at least 100 ounces of water. I would say I live in Florida. It's hot here. We sweat, if I'm
South Carolina here.
Yeah. So you may need more than that, but that's a great place to start and work your way up. The other thing is balancing your blood sugar. So that's actually on my hierarchy, on my pyramid. So regulating the nervous system is number 1, and then balancing the blood sugar is number 2. That is another one. If you want to balance your hormones, like if we're trying to get your hormones back in balance, you have to have your blood sugar balanced. If your blood sugar is out of whack, that is a stressor on the body. So, and that looks like, and most people don't think, they might be like, oh, well, blood sugar, that's like a thing for diabetics. They may not think of themselves in having swings in blood sugar, but pay attention. I even recognized in myself where I would maybe have a more carb heavy snack or just there were certain foods that was like, gosh, I feel so tired. When you feel tired after a meal, so to balance blood sugar, a good rule of thumb is just to eat enough protein. Yeah. Most of us, if we're not eating enough protein, then we're feeling more hungry, more cravings, and especially if we're craving carbs, which we do need carbs for our hormone support. But most women that I talk to, even in my my virtual practice and family practice, in my work, even before, most women don't eat enough protein. So getting in, 4, if you do eat, animal protein, so 4 ounces with a meal would be, more normal. Even when you get I've been places and got a salad out where they throw chicken on top and it's like a couple, it's not an adequate amount of protein. And we used to think you need to eat 6 times a day to speed up your metabolism, blah, blah, blah. Right. Well, we know that spikes your blood sugar and your insulin. Yeah. So there is some evidence around the intermittent fasting to lower your blood sugar and insulin levels. But that if you are in burnout, intermittent fasting can kind of be hard on your body. So that might be something you want to get some guidance around, with whether it's working with a coach or there's a lot of books out there now. Dr. Mindy Pelz is one I love. She has the book Fast Like a Girl. And she does talk about in her book, if you suspect you have adrenal fatigue, this is what you might want to do differently. But that dysregulated cortisol, that abnormal cortisol levels drives up your blood sugar and drives up your insulin. So I find across the board in my clients, even if they're not, maybe they're like, I have 10 pounds I want to lose, but they're exercising, they're eating healthy, and they still have high blood sugar and high insulin levels. Yeah. So it really, even if that's you, and you're like, well, I'm doing all the things, your blood sugar probably could use some work if that nervous system is just dysregulated too. Yeah. But hydrating, balancing your blood sugar, and getting enough sleep, right, can do wonders for your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually looking for a sleep expert to bring on to the podcast. If you know anybody, you'll have to let me know. But I hear this all the time. Like, I can operate on 4 hours of sleep, or I'm good with 5 hours of sleep. I'm like, are you really? It's not scientifically proven. I'm sorry. I'm a science girl too. I know you're telling yourself that. And moms of littles, I get it. It's a season. I remember those sleepless nights, but it's not something we need to be doing on a regular basis. But well, this was awesome. We could literally talk for another hour or two on this topic because there's so many things that we could address. But I think it was a really great conversation for them to kind of just be thinking about and being aware. Awareness is the first step. So just being aware that, you're be validated in your feelings, be validated and you're not feeling yourself. Go investigate that and then get the support you need to actually maybe create those changes. So we didn't dive a ton into like mompreneur, like professionally, but I would just love for you to share just like one last thought. If you could speak to all the mompreneurs who are listening today, what's one thing you would want them to know?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I think, and this is coming from, what I've learned along my journey too, is you kind of touched on it. It's like, well, when I get there, then I can allow myself. Yeah. And I feel like I've done that as well of like, well, I've got to push hard. And once I'm making this amount or once I'm, my business is at this level, then I can, and I realized because I'm in the season where my kids are still small that there was times when I was spending, the kids are home and I'm like trying to work, but they're home and they're playing. And I just was not being present like I really want to, and I'm going, oh, well, when I get here in my business, then I can have all this more time with my kids and be present. Yeah. And I realized, well, no, I need right now is when they're little. They're right now is when they're home with me. Like I can be present right now. Yeah. In my business, I can trust and be smart in my business and still make moves to move it forward. But I've gotten better about boundaries and about, I work when my kids are at school and when my kids are not at school, and I'm being better about myself, even getting enough sleep. I try not to go under 7 hours a night. Yeah. Just so that I'm enjoying the life I'm living right now, and not just working for this dream that I have in my head, trusting that that's going to come. I'm going to keep taking action. I'm going to, things will grow. I'll get there, but I'm not missing out on the life that I'm living right now, working for that thing that I think I want that I actually have right now in front of me. Right.
Right. Like be where your feet are is something that, I try to tell myself, like be where your feet are. If you're working, be working. And when you're with your family, be with your family. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. So we'll put links to all the ways you can connect with Lori in the show notes. I'll put the link to that book as well. If you have any other book recommendations you want to send me on these topics, I'm happy to add those in the show notes. But what's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah. I am probably most active on Instagram, just if they want to learn about me a little more. I also have a podcast. It's called She's Healthy. And then probably just I put everything in a link tree. So if you do my link tree, I have a hormone balance handbook, a free little ebook download that they could access. But probably if you went to my Instagram, you can find then the links there and you can, I post personal stuff and my stories and things like that. So.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, great conversation. Maybe we can have you back on another time and talk about something else related to this.
I'd love to.
Topic. Yeah. All right, friends. Well, we will catch you on the next episode, and you know that I'm believing in you always. Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.